Hello everybody and welcome back to Coalesce's Fairy Gaming. In my last video I learned about Kestrel and her wild story with Unigost and Eordan, but my story finding mission has been put on pause all because Sambor is making me go grocery shopping in his stead before he gives me the deets. I started out the morning with a load of foraging in the hopes that I'd be able to sell enough to buy the seeds I needed to grow for Sambor. As I was doing this, I realized how good of a spot I initially picked for my settlement. It's near a sizable body of water and plenty of wildlife, and the area has plenty of stones, trees, sticks, and berries. The only thing the area lacks are reeds, which provide straw for roofing. It's funny because while picking an area to put down my settlement, my only criteria at the time was a spot I wouldn't have to travel ridiculously far to get to certain places. That's why my settlement is somewhat in the middle of all the other villages. All of the forageables around me just so happen to be an added bonus. The foraging ended up taking me the entire day to do. When I wake up the next morning, I flirt with Ludwika and finally max out her affection toward me. This should mean that the next time I speak with her, I'll be able to choose the proposal dialogue without failure. I'll have to wait for that though, because you can only flirt with someone so many times before the game makes you wait to do it again. When that happens, the woman you're romancing will typically say, "Sorry, I need some time to think about what you said previously." Because it's the closest village to my settlement, I go to Denica to sell my wares. It's after I open the selling and buying log that I realize the food Sambor wants isn't as expensive to buy as I thought it would have been. I only have about 100 coins by the time I buy everything, but in my book it was worth it. This way I won't have to wait for all the seeds I'd eventually plant to grow to fulfill that part of the quest. With his groceries in tow, I race off to Sambor. I thought it was funny how excited I was to go, given how done I was with the constant running around village to village in my last video. I suppose a part of me was almost as excited to meet Kestrel as Rasimir was. I found my dialogue with Sambor funny because Rasimir was acting more wild than Sambor usually was. After giving him his food, I scream in Sambor's face, demanding Kestrel's whereabouts, and surprisingly, he gives me the location without much fuss. I go to Hornica, where Sambor told me Kestrel is, and much to my chagrin, I have to actively search for her. It takes me longer than I'd have cared to admit. I thought she'd have been near the stables given her connection with horses, but Kestrel didn't even live near them. Eventually I find her when I'm going door to door, and Kestrel is as drunk as a skunk. Of course, seeing her extensively inebriated state, Rasimir decides Kestrel needs a potion of sobriety. It feels like years by the time I finally return to Hornica with the potion, but it works like magic. Kestrel thought she was dead for a minute when she finally took notice of me looking into the eyes Rasimir shared with Eordan, but I dispel that thought. When Kestrel learns I know all about the pack and what they did, she tells me a story. It was 12 years after the pack was fully formed. Over a decade of adventures, mischiefs, tightening of bonds, we still felt young, but the thought of retirement from our operation was getting more and more real. We even had a place picked out where we could grow old in peace. Yes, you guessed that right. The valley was always our endgame place to settle down, but none of us realized that the end was so near. We were staying for a job in a town called Navis, spent weeks there. Everybody started to get a little nervous, a little frustrated, because Eordan was planning it all on his own. He was always secretive and we kind of got used to it, but this time something was off. He kept telling us that he was meeting with some informant. I've seen him a couple of times through a window. Tall as an oak and thin as a straw, skinny face and jug ears made him look like a rat. Beady little eyes didn't help him as well. Eordan said that he was keeping us out of the loop for the rat man's safety, so we waited. Played dice, drank, and waited. When Jordan finally revealed his plan, it sounded like a joke. Weeks of planning for a job so simple we could have done it with our eyes closed. Supposedly, there was a lot of stolen loot in the town hall's treasury brought in by corrupted militia. Plan was simple: get in, steal it back, and return it to the rightful owners. Child's play. Jordan and Wolrad were supposed to make a distraction when Unigost and Sambor went inside the treasury, and I, as usual, was waiting with the horses, ready to run. All went according to plan, no surprises. Sambor and Unigost were loading the cargo onto the horses when I saw Wolrad walking towards us alone. He said that Jordan split up with him and should be right back. I didn't like that. There was no reason for them to separate, so I decided to go and check on him. I could smell his posh perfume from a mile away, so it wasn't hard. I swiftly followed his scent right into a town scribe's chamber. That's when I saw it. If it wasn't for the ears, I would never have recognized him. His face was bashed in so hard you could almost see the floor through it. Jordan was standing by the Ratman's body, wiping blood off his hands. He did it with a bottle of mead, which then he took a sip of. I'll never forget how casually he looked in that moment, like it was the most normal thing to do. He hid some kind of book or journal behind his belt, and then he noticed me. For a second there, I saw his true face, his pure reaction to seeing me. It wasn't fear or shame. It was just annoyance. He scowled at me for ruining his plan, for insubordination. This honest reaction even he couldn't control. And just like that, his face changed completely. He was shocked, afraid, out of breath suddenly. Maybe even a tear was glistening in his eye. He grabbed my hand and said that we need to run, that we are not safe, that he will explain. So we ran to our brothers in arms, got on the horses, and escaped. I told everybody what I'd seen. Jordan broke the most sacred of rules, his own rule. He was trying to explain himself, but all that we heard was more and more lies. The trust had been broken. We were talking and arguing the whole night. At dawn, Wolrad was the first to leave. We always kinda treated him like our younger brother who forced himself on a journey, but in that moment he was the most mature of us all, and it was clear that the pack had come to an end. Sambor left right after. Then I did the same. Unigost stayed with Jordan. He couldn't live without him. He loved him the most, even more than me. When I was walking away, I saw that face of Jordan again. Our eyes met for a split second, and they were not sad, but full of contempt. Despite what happened, Kestrel still defends Jordan when Rasimir calls him a killer. She also goes on to tell me that she knew the baby was Unigost's all along. However, Kestrel didn't wish to remain on that topic any longer because she had something more dire to talk to me about. You see, Kestrel didn't think that Jordan died of natural causes. She enlists my help in figuring things out, so first on my list is finding the medical examiner Diter. Apparently he declared Jordan's passing a death of natural causes and immediately burned his body. Kestrel found this suspicious because mere days before his death, she met up with Jordan. He was still in great shape and had no health problems. In fact, he was feeling so good that Kestrel could tell Jordan was planning something. In her words, Kestrel said, "It was obvious to me that he was planning something, and that wasn't to die in his bed. He didn't have any health problems, but enemies? Those he surely had a surplus of." I will say, the moment Unigost told me that Jordan died in his sleep, I thought it was suspicious. Kestrel did say that while she didn't want to believe any of the pack killed Jordan, she couldn't rule them out as suspects. And if any of them did it, my vote is for Unigost. There's been all this talk about how much he loved Jordan like a brother, but between that, Unigost not telling me Jordan was a Castellan, and the whole story between them and Kestrel, on top of Unigas being the only person to stay with Jordan after the pack disbanded. But then again, Jordan made a lot of enemies in his life. Anything could have happened. I find Dieter hiding out in the forest, and he's so paranoid about what he knows that he pretends to be deaf and senile. He doesn't want to tell me anything, but he lets it slip that Jordan was killed via metal poisoning. Eventually, we come to a compromise. I'll get him away out of the valley, supplies and a protective escort, and Dieter will tell me all he knows. I go back to Kestrel and fill her in. She tells me she'll get the horse, which fits her character. Apparently, while she doesn't work at or run the stables, she's good friends with the man who does. I just need to find the protective escort who owes Kestrel a favor and the supplies, which consist of a filled water skin, 20 pieces of dried meat, and 500 gold. The escort, Domagaj, is in Jazerica, but it would figure that I need to get him a new crossbow if he's going to escort Dieter. I run around to find a blacksmith, but a crossbow costs a little over 1,000 coins. Given that I barely have 100 right now, I head back to my settlement to check on things and prepare to start foraging for money again. But of course I get sidetracked. Instead, I finally get married to Ludwika. Now that Ludwika moved into my house, that means I can get more villagers, a man and a woman this time. After assigning them to their home and jobs, I head back home to stock my house so Ludwika has all the supplies she needs. While I'm there, I grab and fill up a water skin, which is one of the supplies Dieter requested. It's the next morning that I look at my journal and realize there's another way to get a crossbow. Turns out Domagaj lost his to the riddle lover in Borowo, Ida, but when I get there she refuses to play with me again. Instead, Ida wants me to get her 20 pieces of fish meat. Easier said than done because not only do I have to go fishing with nothing but a wooden spear, I have to wait to get a fishing hut to harvest the meat. After fishing for a while, I decide to go home. I won't be able to harvest any fish until I get the hut, so I figured I'd wait until then. Meanwhile, I decided now would be a good time to get an heir. Your wife won't be able to work for 2 years when you do this, but seeing as I have to wait who knows how long to get more buildings, Ludwika won't be able to farm for quite a while anyhow. And that's it for today's video. Bye!